Coming off of the insane events of episode 26 which had just aired last week, there was one notable change that the anime did which had truly set itself apart from the manga, and it had fans excited beyond belief, and it's how the Zero Division had completely stolen the show for the Core 2 finale. The Zero Division finally got the respect that they truly deserve, as we learn why they are held in such high regard amongst the Shinigami, and how this elite Shinigami fighting force stands above the Gotei 13. Now, one of the most groundbreaking reveals of episode 26 is easily the Bankai reveal of Senjumaru, as we learn firsthand the devastating power of a Bankai that belongs to one of the Zero Division. Her Bankai, which literally translates to crossing of the old woman's gate, Kala's corpse and thorny entanglements, is an extremely powerful Bankai. It has an aura of absolute terror and immense power that is rivaled by very few Bankai within the series. Now, at the same time, Senjumaru's Bankai is extremely mysterious. Over the week since it was revealed to us, fans have been scratching their head as to how her power works. Now, if there's one thing that we can be certain of, is that Kubo has purposefully left clues within her Bankai reveal, which hopefully in this video we're going to be piecing together so that we can unravel the mystery behind her Bankai. So be sure to stick around until the end of the video, because we're going to be going over every single aspect of this Bankai that was revealed within episode 26, and hopefully by the end of this video you're going to know exactly how Senjumaru's Bankai works. So without further delay, here is my breakdown and analysis of the recently revealed Bankai of Senjumaru Shutara. The 1000-Year Blood War arc anime has continued to be the gift that keeps on giving, with the additions being made to the anime having well exceeded our expectations. The first core had brilliantly paved the way for what was to follow, as it had introduced us to several amazing additions, like the expansion of Uryu's role within the story, and not to mention one of the most important inclusions within Core 1, which was the original Gotei 13 flashback that we received at the start of episode 7. But despite all of this, nothing could have prepared us for the final 3 episodes of Core 2. The finale for Core 2 featured some insane anime original additions, like the flashback between Ichibei and Yuhobak, which had revealed to us the scale of Yuhobak's original Empire of Light, and how Yuhobak had ended up losing the Almighty. Additionally, we also got a glimpse of Uryu utilizing his Shrift ability, the Antithesis, and if this wasn't enough, the anime had taken things up a notch and had given us multiple anime original fight sequences which had redeemed the Zero Division by allowing them to showcase their powers and abilities within the anime. We got to see each of the Zero Division members casually face off against the Shutzstaffel. Now, despite Ichibei and Yuhobak's titanic battle occurring at the same time, I still believe that the Zero Division had absolutely stolen the show for me when it comes to their expanded role within the anime. The new scenes involving the Zero Division had totally caught me off guard, and in my opinion, it was probably the most unexpected plot twist within all of Core 2. Going into the 1000-Year Blood War arc anime, manga readers had definitely wanted the Zero Division to have more of a better role within the story. The Core 2 finale, in my opinion, has definitely redeemed the Zero Division in one of the most incredible ways that none of us could have imagined. Not only did they get to explain and showcase to us why they are more powerful than all of the Gotei 13 combined, but we also learned a key secret behind their dormant power, which is hidden behind a blood ritual. This is because if even one of the Zero Division members was to utilize their full power, then it would result in the 3 realms trembling. The incredible power of the Zero Division was etched into our minds via the character of Senjumaru Shutara, who is dubbed as the Great Weaver, and definitely the new favorite mummy of the Bleach franchise. Moments before the reveal of Senjumaru's amazing Bankai, the anime does a fantastic job of providing us context as to why her Bankai power is so impressive. During the monumental clash between the Zero Division and the Shutzstaffel, the Zero Division make an undeniable statement of strength as Nimaya single-handedly dispatches each member of the Shutzstaffel, who, bearing in mind, represent the most elite of the Sternritter who have been handpicked by Yuhobak. Now, this initial victory by one of the Squad Zero members had set the tone of the battle, but the anime actually extends the humiliation of the Shutzstaffel even after they are revived, which is a huge difference from how the story had panned out within the manga, where after they were revived, the Zero Division were pretty much off-screen. After the defeat of the Shutzstaffel, episode 25 featured some anime original fight sequences sequences between Uryu and Haschwalth against the Zero Division. Now during this portion of the story, Senjumaru faces off against Uryu, who at first glance appears to be doing pretty well against her, as he manages to evade several of her attacks and he even sends off some of his own projectiles back at her. But this illusion of equality is dispersed very quickly as Senjumaru effortlessly blocks Uryu's Licht Regen with an umbrella that she weaves using her Zanpakuto abilities. She then reflects Uryu's own attack right back at him, which instantly defeats him. After Yhwach casts Ashvalen, which revives and empowers his Shutzstaffel, we are then treated to more anime original fight sequences, as it seems as though the QUINCY have the upper hand when the Zero Division one-on-one face off against the Shutzstaffel, with Senjumaru in particular being paired up against Gerard Valkyrie. It's during this fight where we learn that a Zanpakuto's name is Shigarami. Now this was confirmed to be the massive sewing needle which we had seen her use earlier on. Now despite her earlier appearance of being vastly superior to the Shutzstaffel, she's actually unable to keep up with Gerard's new level of power and she is easily defeated by him. And it goes without saying, the other Zero Division members are all defeated in a very similar manner. Gerard then proceeds to mock them as he speaks about how shameful their performance has been, despite claiming to have more power than the entire Gotei 13 combined. Now in my opinion, I believe that Kubo had inserted this line of dialogue here in order to represent the sentiment of fans who were disappointed by the performance of the Zero Division within the manga, because there was a massive fan outrage about how the Zero Division was handled, and it's very likely that this was something that Kubo was well aware of and something that he had wanted to correct. Following this insult from Gerard, we get some new fascinating pieces of information, as we find out that all of the members of the Zero Division have their true power and Bankai sealed. This is because even the slightest use of their true power would result in the three realms of Hueco the world of the living and the Soul Society, being massively disrupted, and it would cause them to shake and tremble. Now if we dissect this line of dialogue, it's evident that if they were to unleash their full power, then they could theoretically shatter the Bleach universe. Ironically, this is a situation that they exist to prevent, so the necessity of their self-imposed power restraints is very evident. As members of the Zero Division, they are not allowed to do anything that would disrupt the balance of the three realms. Their job is to protect the Soul King, and I presume that one of the requirements of protecting the Soul King is to have their power sealed. This is a testament to the level of commitment that they have to fulfill their duty of protecting the Soul King. So if a threat were to emerge that was strong enough to kill them even in their restricted forms, it appears as though the Zero Division have one final resort, which is a sacrifice ritual where one final surviving member of the Zero Division is given the freedom to unleash their full power. There are so many layers of genius as to how Kubo has implemented this new addition into the story, and through all of this new information and lore, Kubo has actually redeemed the Zero Division. Now I am going to go deeper into this topic in a future video that I'll be uploading, where I speak about how the anime had fixed the Zero Division, but for now let's get back to Senjumaru's Bankai. So it is pretty much implied that all of the Zero Division members are on the same level of power, and the only reason why Nimaya had selected Senjumaru to defeat the opponents was because her power was more convenient to use. It's evident that Kubo had wanted to establish new elements of lore surrounding the power of the Zero Division, which he had actually capitalized upon after Senjumaru had activated a Bankai, because we do in fact see the three realms shaking from the sheer force of her spiritual pressure alone, which effectively communicates to the audience the level of power that we're dealing with here, and how utterly outmatched the Shutzstaffel, Haschwalth and Uryu are in this situation. Her Bankai essentially creates a whole new dimension that traps her opponents. Her Zanpakuto Shigarami transforms into a gigantic loom which appears to be crafting the very dimension of the Bankai. After her Bankai is activated, Senjumaru's golden arms join together behind her, with each hand mirroring the same hand sign. Now this is one detail that really had caught my attention, and it suggested to me that this might be a Bankai which has inspiration derived from Buddhism. Now initially inspecting Senjumaru's character design, it was believed that her golden arms may have been a tool that she had created to assist her with everyday tasks, and her Zanpakuto was in fact symbolized by the needles that her golden arms are always holding. But if this was the case, then what would those arms have to do with her Bankai activation, unless the golden arms are not actually an invention, but rather both the needle and the golden arms come together to form her Zanpakuto Shigarami. This is also further supported by the fact that her golden arms disappear when she's using her Bankai. It is as though her arms have also become part of the giant golden loom that manifests behind her. She only regains those signature golden arms after she completes using her Bankai power, so I think that when you put it all together, we get a very compelling argument that her golden arms are also part of her Zanpakuto. The dimension of a Bankai encompasses more than just the looming apparatus, as it rolls out a gigantic red cloth with multiple gates rising from the darkness along its length. As the cloth continues to extend, the dimension begins to weave around all the victims, trapping them within it. After the dimension of a Bankai has fully manifested, it takes the form of a royal tailor's workshop, as multiple elegant textiles drape down the walls and ceilings, presenting an almost regal and ethereal ambience that initially left me awestruck. In hindsight, after having seen and understood her Bankai's true nature, the dimension of a Bankai is absolutely horrifying and very unsettling. With her Bankai now fully manifested and the Shutzstaffel members being trapped within it, Senjumaru begins to walk slowly as she chants thump thump rattle rattle. This sounds like an activation command to a loom, because immediately after she makes this chant, each of the Shutzstaffel members find themselves transported into different spaces. Observing the sudden isolation of Lil Barrow, it is apparent that her Bankai allows for no reaction time. Lil finds himself in a chamber resembling an 8-mirrored kaleidoscope. Senjumaru refers to this space as the first hank to be unraveled. A hank is typically a coiled bundle of yarn or twine. Her line of dialogue here suggests that she is unwrapping new yarn which will be used in weaving the textile that she is creating. You can actually describe Senjumaru's entire Bankai sequence as multiple scenes of a tailor moving from one project to another, as they unravel hanks of yarn in order to weave clothes that perfectly fit and are tailored to that specific customer. In Lil's case, she weaves a tapestry that possesses the power to reflect his own unstoppable attacks back at him. The true genius of this scene is that it ironically foreshadows exactly how he ends up being defeated in the future, since he loses due to Shinken Hakkyoken, the divine sword of the Issei family, which ends up reflecting his own power back at him. Now, thematically, Senjumaru's Bankai can be interpreted in several interesting ways. When you look at how Lil was defeated, it gives off the impression that Senjumaru skipped a couple of chapters ahead and had used that knowledge in order to create this textile which had ended up defeating him. In a lot of ways, you could actually interpret how she defeats all the other Shutzstaffel members in a similar manner, because following Lil, we move on to Askin, who's also in his own separate dimension, and he ends up being defeated after he is crushed by 3 spiky metal walls which are shaped like Senjumaru. This is once again very reminiscent of how he ends up getting defeated by the combined efforts of Yoruichi, Urahara, and Grimmjow. Not only does she defeat Askin, but she massively foreshadows what will happen to him later on in the story, and I think that this adds to the idea of her tailoring each of their defeats specifically into the cloth that she is creating. We then move on to Pernaida, who's next to receive her judgment, as the pattern continues, with Pernaida being attacked by the black cloth that drapes over the walls of the dark room that he is in. At first glance, it appears as though the black tapestries were his real enemies, as they seemingly surround him, but then very quickly they disappear and they reveal the black sand beneath him as it completely swallows up Pernaida. Now, funny enough, Pernaida is defeated by 2 enemies. The first, an assisting force in black clothing, i.e. Nemu, and Mayuri, whose surname is Kurotsuchi, which literally translates to black soil. So once again, the way that she defeats Pernaida foreshadows how Pernaida is actually defeated later on. This pattern continues to become more apparent as we discuss the next few opponents, as the limbs of Gerard are held in place by multiple cloths, as he is then frozen in place almost instantly. Now, the room that he is in looks like a massive ice field, and the cloths that freeze him become transparent like ice. I'm really impressed by each of the rooms that Senjumaru sends her opponents to within a Bankai dimension. Kubo obviously did a fantastic job of designing these realms, and the CGI team deserve a lot of credit for translating his designs into animated form. Now, going back to how Gerard is defeated, it is very similar to what happens to him while he is fighting Hitsugaya, as he ends up completely frozen. Now, considering that this is literally the 4th time that a Bankai has predicted events from the future, does this mean that this is the true power of Senjumaru's Bankai? I believe that things will become a lot more clearer after we see how her Bankai handles Haschwalth and Uryu. Next up, Haschwalth finds himself trapped in a total hellscape where he is consumed by unquenchable flames that relentlessly torment him until he is reduced to nothing but ashes. This sequence echoes his heartbreaking battle against Bazbi later on in the story, but strangely this is only a future event and not necessarily what ends up defeating Haschwalth, because we know that Haschwalth doesn't die until after his battle with Uryu and following Yuhobak casting Ashvalan on him. So what exactly is the point of the future event being shown here if it isn't actually his definitive definitive end. Because similar to Haschwalth, Gerard doesn't die from being frozen by Hitsugaya, because once again it is slightly after Yhwach uses Haschwalth to drain their lives, which in my opinion suggests something different. And to understand this, we need to talk about the final room. And this final room is where Uryu finds himself trapped within. It's a dimly lit space with dark cloth surrounding him, as Senjumaru calls it the Star of the Dark Night. The cloth in the center of the room supports a massive Wandenreich cross on it, where Uryu is absorbed by its abyss and is led into the afterlife. The Quincy cross begins to dimly shine and it starts to absorb Uryu's energy. This ends up greatly weakening Uryu and he collapses onto the ground. Now after it absorbs Uryu's energy, the pattern on the cloth changes and is now covered in convergent patterns that makes it look like the Quincy cross is absorbing energy into itself. The cross itself also grows more detailed after absorbing Uryu's energy. Now after Uryu collapses, Senjumaru rolls out all the now finished tapestries from her loom and it reveals 6 new beautiful prints of fabric with silhouettes of the Shutzstaffel which are embroidered onto their surface. As Senjumaru seals their fate with the announcement of her technique, Loom of the 6 colored floating patterns of death, you see these textiles roll down just like the other pieces that we had seen when she first activates her Bankai, which has me wondering if all of those tapestries that we saw upon her Bankai activation are her former enemies that she had defeated with a Bankai in the past. Because if this is the case, then it adds a totally new level of horror to her Bankai. So what exactly does Senjumaru's Bankai do? I think the answer to that lies within the final room that Uryu was trapped within, and it's the 6th hank of yarn that Senjumaru uses to weave the cloth that ends up defeating him. Now this is the most interesting end that we've seen for any of the Sternritter who are being caught within her sinister Bankai. Not only is it the least brutal of all of the sentences, but it also hints at events that we haven't seen befall Uryu, but at the same time it's definitely something that we have seen before. Uryu's tapestry is the final piece of the puzzle that really helped me piece together what exactly her Bankai does. Let's take apart Uryu's room piece by piece. Now using the last 5 rooms as the precedent for this analysis, we can assume that this room also speaks of Uryu's fate in some shape or form. It uses imagery familiar to both the audience and Uryu in order to lay out a very simple picture. The massive Quincy cross on the cloth in my opinion represents Yhwach, and the entire room is a representation of the Wandenreich. The fact that Senjumaru appears within this room as a shadow supports this, because we know that the Wandenreich are the invisible empire hidden within the shadows. Senjumaru's poetic reference to the Star of the Dark Night also alludes to the Sternritter who are the Star Knights. However, given the poem's focus on a singular star, it seems more plausible that this star signifies Yhwach. This is because Yhwach was the beacon of hope that the Quincy's had held on to during their darkest hours over those 1000 years that they remained hidden. The Quincy Emperor's song further supporting this idea of Yhwach being their beacon of hope. He was their guiding light out of their perpetual night of defeat. The subsequent lines of the poem suggesting absorption and a journey to the afterlife, this represents the inevitability of Uryu being absorbed by Yhwach and losing his life. Now this is literally the fate of every Sternritter since they exist to be consumed by Yhwach. The fact that the pattern of the fabric changes is meant to represent how Yhwach will only grow more powerful after he absorbs Uryu's life and his power. This is represented by the extra details that the Wandenreich cross gains after it absorbs Uryu's energy. So considering the symbolic representation of what had happened within each of the rooms within a Bankai dimension, especially the ones involving the 5 Shutzstaffel and Uryu, it leads me to a theory that what if this Bankai isn't actually manifesting the events of the future, but is rather creating them, ensuring that they are predetermined events that will unfold within her opponent's lives. Manga readers recognize the fates that befall the Shutzstaffel members within a Bankai realm because they foreshadow events that we've all read within the manga. But in the context of the anime's continuity, this is the first time that we are actually seeing these things occur, meaning that Senjumaru's Bankai may be crafting these events rather than reflecting them from the future. This means that everything that happens to all of the Sternritter in the future was because they had crossed paths with this Bankai. Senjumaru's Bankai may well have the power to superimpose these fates onto her targets. Interestingly enough, the one character who is able to break out of this fate is Uryu. Senjumaru's Bankai had destined for him to end up being consumed by Yhwach's Haschwalth, but we are aware that Uryu's future ends up being the complete antithesis of this prediction, no pun intended. Instead of him losing his life in order to empower Yhwach, Uryu becomes the one who takes Yhwach's power away with the still silver arrowhead, and he paves the way for Yhwach's death. This This sets up Uryu as a character whose existence reverses destiny, and that is such a powerful thematic idea, which also amazingly complements the theories about Ichigo's true Bankai power, which is apparently to shatter fate. Now, coming back to Senjumaru's Bankai as a weaver of fate, Kubo actually made that pretty clear in the name of this Bankai, and a fantastically put together post on the Bleach subreddit, Reddit user Saturn_Eclipse breaks down all of the kanji that makes up Senjumaru's Bankai name and retranslates it into what its true meaning implies. Shatatsu Karagara Shigarami no Tsuji, when broken down into the kanji that best represents the appearance of the Bankai, translates as crossing into the Buddhist world, only skeletons will remain at the end of time. The sewing needle constructs the crossroads of life and death. This implies that Senjumaru's Bankai influences the decisions of the entrapped characters, directing them towards fatal outcomes. It alters their karmic trajectory towards doom. For Lil Barrow, Askin, Pernida, Gerard and Haschwalth, pivotal decisions led them to confront adversaries which unbeknownst to them had ended up sealing their fates. The genius of having Senjumaru's Bankai interfere with their fates means that it actually completely removes the absurdity of all of them going up against powers which appear to be perfectly designed just to counter them. It can't be called a plot convenience anymore when a greater hand had weaved their fates to turn out this way. So a lot of the fan criticisms that people had about plot armor, or that the Shutzstaffel ended up facing off against opponents who had the perfect counter to them, have now completely been remedied by this addition that Kubo has made to the anime. So even if the Shutzstaffel, Haschwalth and Uryu end up being freed from the Bankai's power, their fates have already been set in stone. Even if Senjumaru is defeated, it doesn't assure their survival, because her Bankai's power is so formidable that even in her defeat she ends up winning. One of the most impressive aspects of Senjumaru's Bankai is how it incorporates very clever ways of defeating each Sternritter. In Lil Barrow's case, it created a room where his greatest strength, which was his unstoppable offensive power, was turned against him, making his own strength his downfall. Askin is defeated by being trapped under 3 layers of spiky metal walls. The metal walls restrict his movement, and because of their inorganic nature, Askin can't escape by poisoning them. It turns Askin's extremely high tolerance to pain against him, since it will guarantee that he stays alive while he is skewered by the spikes of the metal walls. And the fact that Askin is being crushed by objects that possess no Reiatsu of their own, he cannot grow immune to them. This ensures that he remains in eternal pain and can do nothing about it. Pernida's room also perfectly counters his abilities, as it surrounds him in a vortex of sand that completely negates his ability to use his nerves. Due to the light nature of sand, his nerves find nothing solid to grasp or manipulate, and because he is essentially trapped in a confined space, he is unable to escape and ends up being buried alive. Similarly, Gerard's power is cleverly hindered when he is frozen solid. The ice restricts his mobility, making him unable to defend himself, and since he is merely being held in place, Gerard isn't taking any damage that will trigger the power of the miracle. This means that Gerard can neither grow stronger, nor can he fight his way out of this situation. After Haschwalth loses his sacrifice shield, he is showered with non-stop misfortune by the fire, and this leaves him with no means of saving himself from the flames. Uryu's room also directly counters his abilities due to him being the most traditional Quincy among all of the Shutzstaffel. It appears as though Uryu depends the most on external reishi in order to power up his own attacks. This is an observation even Senjumaru makes when they fight in the Cage of Life, because Uryu was struggling to gather reishi for both Heiren Hyaku as well as his attacks, so trapping him in a room that drains him of that energy had rendered Uryu pretty much powerless. Senjumaru's Bankai isn't just rewriting fate, but it also works extremely well as a conventional power-up. It is evident that Kubo had put so much thought into designing how this Bankai would function. He deserves so much credit for having included this never-before-seen transformation into the anime. As I've spoken about earlier in the video, just by including this Bankai, you can theorize that Senjumaru had set in stone all of the defeats of the Shutzstaffel, leaving no rooms for people arguing about plot convenience or plot armor. Now, before wrapping up my analysis on her Bankai, I'd like to quickly debunk a rapidly growing theory about this Bankai and its writing. It's this idea that because of its ability to manifest abilities of varying elements, it breaks the established rule of Zanpakuto being unable to have power over more than one element. Now, this is blatantly a false notion that's being spread, because Senjumaru's Bankai has nothing to do with elemental manipulation, but rather it manipulates the concept of fate. It's not an ice or fire type Zanpakuto, so its ability to conjure fire and ice is no different than Rose's Bankai Kinshara Butodan, which allows him to create various different elements by using auditory illusions. These Zanpakuto can create these elements as a byproduct of their main abilities, but it doesn't make their Zanpakuto elemental in nature. I just felt like I had to clarify this in this video before this theory gets a bit more traction online. I know that I've spent a massive portion of this video praising Senjumaru's Bankai, but I just love how it fits perfectly in place with what we already know about the Zero Division and their abilities. As the foundation of the Soul Society's million-year history, Nimaya, Ichibei, and Senjumaru all possess powers that represent archetypes and concepts. Ichibei possesses power over names, which literally define existence in the Bleach universe. Nimaya, being a swordsmith, possesses the literal archetype of the blade, a sword that cuts without chipping or staining, and kills with a single slash, which is the literal definition of the perfect blade. And now we know that Senjumaru isn't just a weaver of clothing, but also a weaver of the very tapestries that fate is written on. Now this raises my curiosity as to what concepts Kiryu and Kirinji represent. Well, we've reached the point of the video where I want to hand over the discussion to all of you. What do you think about Senjumaru's incredible Bankai? Has this video helped you to understand her powers a bit better? Do you agree with some of the theories that I've spoken about in this video? If you have your own theories about Senjumaru's powers and abilities, then definitely leave them in the comments down below. I look forward to reading all of your thoughts. And lastly, thank you for making it to the end of this video, and I cannot wait to see you in my next Bleach video.
If you enjoy my content, then you can support my channel through Patreon for as little as $1 a month, or even through YouTube by becoming a channel member. You will gain access to exclusive channel perks and a Discord server which I frequently use. So become a member of my Zero Division and be the first to know about my upcoming videos. And once again, thank you for sticking around till the end of the video, and whatever you contribute will mean a lot to me.